Hello again, everybody. My name is Mike Petralia. It's episode 225 of Patriots Beat on the CLNS Media Network. You can find us at www.clnsmedia.com. Follow us on Twitter at CLNS Media and on Facebook at facebook.com/CLNS Media. The all-new CLNS Media website has also launched at clnsmedia.com. clnsmedia.com is now the home of this podcast and also over 40 other podcasts and vidcasts in the world of sports, finance, comedy, and lifestyles. We are so excited to have our show featured on the brand new CLNS Media website. Support our network by checking out this episode 225 of Patriots Beat. Check it out at clnsmedia.com. That is clnsmedia.com. My pleasure to welcome to podcast 225 of Patriots Beat, the one and only Matt Chatham. You can find him at Chatham58, the number, of course, he wore for the New England Patriots, a three-time Super Bowl champion. Matt Chatham, welcome to the show, Matt. Thanks so much for taking time out.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Trags.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving into quite a bit, and obviously this is the day after what was pretty much, I thought, kind of an expected meltdown in Miami. If the Patriots were going to have one of these games, you could see it coming, knowing that they were without, Tom Brady was without Rob Gronkowski going in, knowing that they didn't have their best pass rusher, their sack leader, and Trey Flowers, knowing that they were banged up early in the game. They were also without David Harris, the linebacker, and they're really struggling in terms of depth, I thought, on Monday night, and it really showed up, didn't you think?
Well, all I would say is I think that's a factor. I don't know if it's the factor. The thing that I was resting upon, if I was sort of predicting when this might come, and I think that's why I felt the 16-0 talk was so silly. You just kind of expect there's going to become a point where it comes to a head, a bad week, and that just happens. They have this crazy 5 out of 6 on the road schedule. This is 4 of 5, so this is sort of the tail end of this thing. Still, obviously, another week to go with Pittsburgh, but I thought fatigue, mental fatigue, the notion of having some of the depth issues you talked about, but I think by and large they walked out on the field with essentially the same team as a week ago, less Gronk. And I don't think Gronk's worth 20 points. I think Gronk is as good as you can be at that position. He's an amazing player, makes a big difference in the offense, but should be more than no guy in this system should ever be worth more than one score, maybe 10. I just have always kind of viewed it that way. The strength is the depth, the strength is sort of the versatility of the entire group, the really ability to do so many different things well. And you lose one, it sucks. You lose Julian Edelman, it sucks. But they're diverse enough to where they can change course and still be very, very good. The problem with the absence of Gronk, and it just happened to sort of time out where, at least on the offensive side of the ball, where you got Chris Hogan back, but you always know when you get a guy back off of a major shoulder thing where he misses a month of football, that first week's going to be tentative. That first week is going to be just kicking off rust. So it times out in a pretty poor way. I think there's one lens to look through it and say, great, Hogan's back. Well, I think you'd rather have Hogan back in a week where you were less dependent upon him, quite frankly. I think in a week where, holy cow, in the absence of Gronk, you're really going to need to log minutes out of Chris and targets and things like that. That's, in my view, a little bit unfair on a player. You hope, you got to do your job. You're being paid for it, but it's a tough spot to be in. So they felt super thin offensively as they started plowing into series after series, and I was like, good Lord, this is just going to be a game of checkdowns and go routes. And that's not a good formula against this Dolphins defense. So they certainly felt limited as they got into it, I guess more so when they kicked off. I think it became much more apparent where the stresses were going to be, and they were really built to take care of them, and they played sloppy, and that kind of makes it all go poof.
Speaking with Matt Chatham, NESN.com, or NESN Patriots expert analyst and ESPN college football analyst, also the host of the Real Thing Patriots podcast, available on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. Matt, you mentioned Rob Gronkowski should never be more, somebody like a Rob Gronkowski, as great as he is, should never be worth more than maybe one score in a football game at the NFL level especially. But you can certainly point to his absence as a huge reason they were 0 for 11 on third down, no?
Yeah, well, I think he can, and I thought Coach Belichick did a pretty decent job of breaking down how they got to 4 third downs. And I think, again, it's sort of it's the table setters, in my view. It's always kind of been that way, where you'll be better at third down, which is why I don't love the idea of third down percentages anyhow, because I need to know third and what. You're going to be a high third down percentage team if you're always third and manageable. If you're always third and 4. But if you're third and 10, you're third and 8, third and 7, whatever, your percentage is going to suck. So I think that's part and parcel. So if Gronk is there, the run pass threat is higher on earlier downs. So that loosens people slightly, so just enough for a small crease can make a 2-yard gain of 4. And all of a sudden the table's set just demonstrably a little bit better, right? So, second and 7 or 6 is so much better than second and 9. And there were so many second and 9s or second and 8s or even second and 10s yesterday where it was just like, okay, they don't have it. And oddly enough, it just shows you how much sort of the minute details can matter at this level, because that same defense 14 days ago is 200 yards on the ground.
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, something so subtle as this, and it's, to give the Dolphins a modicum of credit here too. I mean, they adjusted themselves. They go study film. They got the win. They won a lot of one-on-one battles that weren't just simply scheme related. You get a second swing at a dude. Like I thought Joe Tooney dominated his matchup 2 weeks ago and lost a lot of them this week, and that's just football. Both two good players going against one another, and you'll start losing some one-on-ones, and that becomes a lot less about scheme. But again, to the Gronk point, though, I think that the reason he's relevant is because if you're a defender, you cannot be on your toes with Gronk out there, because you may be back on your heels in a second chasing something in play action. So it makes you play square, makes you play straight. But when he's gone, I think you're more apt to be aggressive. You can be out in front of your toes. You can be leaning forward. You can be aggressively getting into edge set, aggressively getting into run gaps, because you're not going to have to turn and retreat, most likely. I mean, to recover against Dwayne Allen, it's not a knock on Dwayne. It's just how he's used in the absence of Gronk. He was chipping edges. He's slow to release because they need him for other things, and he's not going to be a stretch the middle of the field guy. So it cuts the keys in half, I think, for a lot of the defensive players, and it makes the line play in line less of a guessing game. You kind of, things declare, and it just makes football a lot easier for a defense.
I got to tell you, Matt, first of all, you are somebody, if there were a Big Bang Theory on the NFL and football in general, you would be the star of it, because I think you break down, and I mean this dead serious. We've had many discussions before at Gillette Stadium. You love to get into the science of the game. I mean, just even there where you're talking about the difference in a linebacker lean playing up against a guy like Rob Gronkowski versus maybe, facing somebody across the edge like a Dwayne Allen. And you played linebacker, obviously. Most of your core contribution were on special teams, but you were a linebacker, a terrific linebacker at the University of South Dakota. Quickly, I just want to get an idea from you. Where did you develop that appreciation of the science of the sport?
Well, I think I got to be kind of a tape wonk in college. I mean, I had some great coaches there at the University of South Dakota, other players that, good friends of mine, Nathan Lake. It's not a name that anyone would know, but Nate Lake was our middle linebacker, a really bright guy, a really good friend of mine. Matt Skiff was. These are all names you'll never know, but these are small school college players that were really good players in their own right. That maybe weren't the most athletic guys, but they were hard nosed, tough as nails, and they liked that part of the game as well. So we studied as a linebacker group. We would go over to a house, one of the guys' houses, beers, booze it up, but then also have throw tape in for 3 or 4 hours. And sit there, just drink and watch film, which is, it's probably not, hey kids, don't do that. But, it was,
right.
That was, I think in part that though is, it was sort of a love for that part of it and understanding of how you can get ahead that way. And quite frankly, when I did play linebacker, I mean, my role in the NFL was we played a 3-4 and I was the fifth guy, fifth or sixth, depending on if I was rotated inside or out. So I had to always know everyone's spot. So, I know that on a weekly basis, I'm going to somewhere in that 20 to 30 play range for special teams, but then somewhere between 10 and 20 of defense. But I never knew where it was going to hit. So you had to know everything. I had to memorize the outside linebacker spots on both sides, which are a little bit different because an open side guy, open being away from the tight end, plays a little different than the tight side guy. If you're the tight side guy, which is probably more my strength, I don't pass rush I was a terrible pass rusher, but I was a rundown guy, which is more like special teams. I love playing the box. I love tackling and chasing and all that kind of stuff, and playing run scheme stuff against pulling tackles and guards and back motion stuff, and just the basic sort of formula stuff you see. I guess maybe more at the college level. I like the box, and that's I had to know it from different angles because I never know when I get in and get a series at will, or get a series or two at Jack on the open side, or then now you're back to Sam, which is more my comfortable spot. So I think it was more out of necessity when you get to the pro level. You had to learn everything, and once you start seeing it from all different angles, I think you start to get a greater appreciation, understanding for all that's going on.
So you came on right at the beginning of Bill Belichick's tenure in New England. I'm curious, did you ever sit down and have these type of football wonky X's and O's conversations with him for hours or even half hour at a time?
I would say with Coach, his interaction with us is when he would just come into the linebacker room, and Rob Ryan was the one who ran our room early on. It was Robbo and Pepper Johnson, and I would more so than Bill directly. I think I learned more from Bill just from team meetings, or when he's full addressing the defense or when he's full addressing the team. But when you get to really, really nuts and bolts stuff, a lot of it comes more from your position coaches, really, and that's where you sit in the dark room for God knows how many hours with your snacks and your food up on the table and your notebook, just taking notes for hours and hours and hours. And for me, Bill was the director. He's the conductor. He kind of set the stage, set the standard, and the position coaches are meant to sort of give you the lessons, teach you the techniques to make good on what the conductor wants. So I think a lot of my real earthy stuff you learn from like Pep, which was I thought one of the better, because he's sort of a bridge. He's a guy that played and then coached too. So you're getting it's kind of like the Vrabels of today. Mike's out there, Izzo's out there, and I think they're great resources for players. It'd be interesting to play for those guys because they're about my age and they're buddies. But that's that extra perspective that you get. So you don't just get sort of the book knowledge. You get sort of the real tangible stuff that's real and what's not, and that's super helpful because and I think we see a lot of that now, and it's reasonable. And I'm not making fun of it. I just think that there's going to be, as people open up the all 22 worlds to untrained eyes, you're going to get a lot of memorization and book knowledge, which is 1/8, of understanding football. So it's really the art that's behind it that I think tells more of the story. And that's where I think I really came to appreciate it more. Getting it from Rob, who was getting it from his dad, Buddy, getting it from Pepper, who got it from Carl Banks and from Taylor and, Parcells and like that whole group. And then getting it from Bill, who's just one of the greatest researchers of football, period. And then from Romeo Cornell, who's coached for, that same staff. And then Dean Pease with an entirely different perspective from Kent State and Michigan State at the college level and cover 4, which was something that we didn't even do in the early days with the Patriots. So it's kind of cool to get all the different perspectives, and then all of a sudden you piece it together and you get a little better view. For me, I know we don't talk about this a lot of the Patriots stuff, but those 3 years I spent down in New York, Bob Sutton, old Army coach, the guy that has had that Chiefs defense playing pretty well at times, much more so early in the year. But I thought it was helpful playing with him, playing with Jim Herman, playing with other coaches that see it a different way, So I think it just helps sort of broaden your horizons a little bit.
Speaking with 3-time Super Bowl champion Matt Chatham, host of the Real Thing Patriots podcast, available on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. He's also the Patriots expert analyst for NESN and ESPN college football analyst. Listen up, basketball fans. Basketball season is back, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes have returned to action, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against your friends. They've even got beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part, you'll get to draft a new team each day. And drafting a team is arguably the best part of fantasy. The only thing better, of course, winning cold hard cash doing it. Just ask Dan from St. Louis or Jeremy from Austin. They both turned a $3 entry into $1,000. Huge cash prizes and bragging rights await only at DraftKings. Use code CLNS at DraftKings.com to play for free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes tonight. Do not wait. Use code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can seriously cash in tonight. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Once again, speaking with Matt Chatham, host of the Real Thing Patriots podcast, available on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. Matt, let's go back to Bill Belichick for a moment, but actually taking a look at what he said on Tuesday in his conference call. Second question asked of him: how do you best balance turning the page from Monday night, but also making sure you learn and correct mistakes from that performance? I want you, based on your experience, take us inside what the meeting rooms are like this week at Gillette getting ready for Pittsburgh, and what the overall feeling is inside the locker room as Belichick tries to put this Monday night loss in Miami in the past.
It's tough, Trags, and there's really no easy answer to this one, because the reality of it is everyone would love to say on to Pittsburgh, right?
Right.
But because you have a lot of new outstanding problems that crept up in this game that hadn't necessarily been issues for you, can't just, say, oh, that happened. Oops, crazy things happened in Miami, moving on. Because they're not that. They're real, legitimate things that can be corrected with just a subtle change or a move or a reconfiguration of a front, or higher or focus on a different tackle technique, or a conversation or a drill that makes guys play with better leverage relative to the other tacklers that are with them, whatever the hell it is. I mean, trust me, there's probably 20 errors that they could come up with, but one of the biggest things you balance in situations like this, there's the pull for the other game. But if there are going to be certain concepts that were wrong and big time wrong, that hadn't been issues before, if you just say on to Pittsburgh, it doesn't exactly work like that. The point is, you have to make the corrections, and you have to be demonstrative in the corrections. You have to know that they were corrected before you can actually do the whole on to Pittsburgh thing. And that's what sucks about short weeks, especially. And I do not get how the NFL does this, and I'm not saying this to claim that there's some sort of anti-Patriots bias. I'm sure you could search the schedules and find other people's with this issue. I just don't think that if teams have Monday night games, they should travel the following week if they don't have buys. Obviously,
right.
So I just think that to me does not make sense. I mean, it's one thing to have a short week. Short weeks suck, but short weeks in travel, that's competitively unfair. I don't understand how they rationalize allowing the algorithm that puts these things together with the schedule to allow those things to stand. I would think you could sort or filter your program to ensure that didn't happen. I'm thinking like a GPS, like you can tick off certain boxes and say avoid certain bridges, avoid certain things. And to me, I don't understand how traveling on a short week can be allowed when each of a really short schedule of only 16 games counts so much. So the reason I say that is they have to get on to Pittsburgh, but they cannot just bury the many, many new issues that showed up. So, and that's a challenge because you don't get to practice them. You don't get to marinate in it as much because they got back in the early hours of Tuesday. And I don't know the specific schedule because that's usually a week-by-week thing if they change it. But usually in situations like this, I mean, Tuesday, it's pretty much a rest day. Maybe they came in and watched the film. I don't know if they did. If not, you're coming in super early on Wednesday, and once you get to Wednesday, your focus has to be on the next team. But because travel only brought you back on a Tuesday, how and when do you address what happened? They have to sort of break Wednesday up where part of it is still corrections and part of it is looking forward, which now shortens your overall, ability to focus on the next team. So it's tough. It's not easy. And this is, like I sort of alluded to earlier, this is the 5th of 6 on a road. So it's not only 5th of 6, the final one is on a shortened road travel week. So there would have been fatigue anyway, but now it's shortened on the road. An analogy we were kind of joking around with on another show earlier today. That was actually NESN. We were talking about this. Where imagine if you work out or whatever. I mean, this sounds like a meathead sort of metaphor, but if you're doing the bench press or you're doing squats or you're doing something like that, imagine doing a set of 10, and you know that the 10th is usually your hardest rep. But imagine going to the bottom of that and then having people add weight. That's what it feels like when you have this goofy 5 of 6, and the 6th one is on a shortened week that travels. It just doesn't make much sense to me. That seems competitively unfair. I don't understand how that lives on in the formula.
And obviously, I wouldn't expect them to calculate this into the formula. It's kind of hard to do that. It's impossible to do that when the schedules come out. But not only that, throw on top of the fact the emotional challenge of going to Pittsburgh, your number one rival in the AFC. And I think the schedule makers had to have a sense, at least anyway, that the AFC would come down in some shape or form to Pittsburgh and New England. You put that game at the end of that 5 games in 6 on the road. It just seems like too much of a mountain to climb. I mean, you've been on great Patriot teams, Matt, that have won great games, have had great streaks of winning on the road, obviously. But this just seems really, really unfair. I want to move on to what happened with Duron Harmon. You played, obviously, with Rodney Harrison. Rodney ever go off like Duron did on Monday night on the sideline, off on his teammates?
I don't remember like an extended speech from Rodney that way. Rodney was more somebody who would chirp on the field. He would definitely yell at the back of your head. I mean, if you're up there at linebacker level, you hear the safety behind you, and you turn, and he's MFing someone. But, I mean, I don't really remember speech makers so much. I mean, that was an unusual thing that Duron had to do, and I'm glad he did. I mean, he's really risen to the front of the room there. I love that they keep the standard so high, 8 weeks of under 17, and all of a sudden you give up about that many in a quarter. That's the times where you have to show your seriousness, and I liked it, but no, I don't recall. Brewski's another fiery guy. Obviously, Willie is not going to give speeches, but he can be stern in short bursts, and people know it's serious. But I never felt like, and I'm not saying this team is either. I mean, you could get that from Devin McCourty on any given Sunday. You get that from maybe a couple other different guys in the room. Hightower, but he's not healthy now. So I think just each room has a little dynamic, and you don't always necessarily have a speech maker. I would say this way: when I was in New York with the Jets, one of our captains at the time, the defensive captain was Jonathan Vilma, O-captain was Pennington, and I was the special teams guy. And John was big time speech maker. He's the guy who, and I think that came from the New Orleans Saints thing, where Drew Brees does that big thing in pregame. So there's sort of like different cultures at different places where, he came from the U, and they give those big speeches. They give the fiery sideline speech. They give the fiery pregame speech. And I'd been in New England for the first 6 years of my career, and we didn't do it that way at South Dakota. We didn't really have. You mentioned Rodney. Yeah, Rodney would chirp for sure, but there was no speeches. There were no not less of the rah-rah stuff. And I don't say it derogatorily, rah-rah, but just less of the motivational thing. It was more just of a corporate kind of, you got a job to do, go do it. But other places that way. And for my first season with the Jets, I always kind of felt like I was staring around the room going, "Whoa, this doesn't register with me," because I'm not used to that part as much. But there are certainly moments that's appropriate. I think last night Duron hit on notes that needed to be said, not for anything that really necessarily moved the needle in that game, but just more of a, here's the standard going forward. Let's not fall in this kind of hole again.
What was your reaction when you saw what happened to Ryan Shazier in Cincinnati? You're a linebacker, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, my first thought was, and I've been railing on this for a while, and I believe this very strongly, and I don't think it doesn't fall on the level of faith. I think it falls in just a better understanding of how this stuff works. I think this heads-up football stuff, which it's not even heads up. It's more the heads out stuff. This idea of turning the head to air quote lead with the shoulder, which doesn't happen generally speaking if you think of a pane of glass, because the human's head's out in front. So as soon as you lean forward, your head's first. And what Ryan did is keep his head down. And the people that you see with their head down more and more and more in football now are the people that are trying to turn their shoulder. People do not. The guys that try to get the tip first and turn their head to the side, their heads are always down. And that's physics. That's not, not adopting a technique. It's nothing. It's not, being indifferent to what they're trying to get you to do. There are two choices. You keep your head up, and yes, the face mask and sort of the V between your shoulder and the side of your helmet will be a big part of the collision over and over and over again. And that's just the reality of football. And why does that matter? And why is that the safest spot? Because it's the best spinal position. And the reality of it is, when this whole new movement to just make sure heads aren't in there, well, what it does is your head still gets contact. It just ends up being the side of the head. Or they go too over the top to try to lead with a shoulder, and momentum inertia keeps you moving, and the big-ass heavy head with a helmet on it falls, and it's always down. A guy's eyes are almost never up anymore. And what's that do? It puts the spine in a very, very dangerous spot. You're going to see these compression fractures. You're going to see these issues where guys have spinal issues more than the concussion stuff. And it's not as if the heads are ever going to be out. They can't be out. All it does is change the contact area from the crown, or less the crown, more the hairline, to the side of the head. You just see stuff go in the temples more. You see guys' sides of their heads get hit, and that doesn't change. It's not like there's one CTE entry point. It can happen at either spot. So I think it's just a lot of foolishness of people that shouldn't be teaching tackle technique, teaching it because they believe to get their heads out. And I get it. It's not that it's not a good idea, but this is something that you come up against in football a lot, where there's sort of competing medical forces, and this happens all the time. The ortho guy thinks one thing, the chiropractor thinks, the ortho guy's thinking all soft tissue, the chiropractor's thinking only skeletal, and then the medical dude, he's got his own sort of things, and then the neuro guy's got his version. And right now we've got the neuro guys taking over, and the neuro guy doesn't know anything about kinesiology. The neuro guy doesn't know anything about body mechanics and how they hit. So they're just going to suggest, hey, get your head out of there, just because we don't like heads getting hit and you need a head for the rest of your life. Well, you know what it does? It puts the rest of your body in greater risk. And if you don't understand tackling tech to begin with, you don't realize that you can't get the head out. It can't get out. It's always going to be in there. You just are changing the entry point. So when I saw Ryan Shazier, I saw a guy with his head down, that if someone had tell him it's not a sin if your heads collide, it's actually pretty natural, get your head up, and you'll probably contact with part of your face and part of your shoulder. That's the healthiest, that's the safest spot. And, we're just in a place now where everyone's sort of denying that fact.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, it's good that he is apparently making more and more of a recovery every day, and thanks to the medical marvels of science and of medicine. I asked Josh McDaniels, even without Ryan Shazier, who was placed on season-ending IR on Tuesday, about the Pittsburgh defense, and McDaniels said this linebacking core has always been the core of what they do in Pittsburgh. Yes, they have Cameron Hayward. Yes, they have Stephon Tuitt. But the Bud Duprees, the TJ Watts, this is a very aggressive Pittsburgh defense that Tom Brady will be seeing on Sunday. And I guess Brady's always been able to take advantage of aggressive defenses, but the thing that's been the big, bone of contention this year with Mike Tomlin is he finally going to get away from the zone defense? Is Keith Butler going to get away from zone defense and go man to man against the Patriots?
Well, it's an interesting question this week, Trags, because Miami spent a lot of time in single high. They played a lot of man's defense. So if you have, and Pittsburgh did a decent job of spending their offseason. Well, not decent, because I tend to think you shouldn't talk scheme in the offseason. You're going to do what you're going to do, and you don't need to give those things away. But they talked a lot about wanting to play more man because it was such an abysmal mess against the Patriots in the playoffs, where it just looked like a lot of spot dropping and Tom just picking them apart. And there's two different concepts in general zone defense stuff. Where one, I always call it the Indy way. Indianapolis was always big on that. They get the tiny little linebackers that were almost safeties, basically, that were very agile and they could move, and they spot drop. They turn and run to a spot. They have like a landmark they're supposed to go to, And then they're more quick. They're quicker than I am. They're we're on the 6'4", 250 linebackers. These are the 6'1", 225 guys, 230. Those guys go to a spot and they're maybe going to be a step quicker. And everything that they're dependent upon is reaction speed. Reaction. How quickly can they react? How well can they read? And how quickly can they close on a play? The other way is matching. We're basically, you're kind of sort of going to an area, but you're really route matching. You're seeing how the routes develop, and then it almost becomes man. So it's sort of zone and then man what's in the zone kind of thing. So that's two different things. In Pittsburgh a year ago, that was just spot dropping, looked like to me. Turn around to an area, and then the Patriots sit in the area they're not, and then throws the ball. I mean, it's really that simple. So, I mean, if they come out with anything anywhere near that now, I think the results will be the same. But the temptation will be after watching Miami play a lot of zeros and ones and fives and things like that, where you're basically man across the board, at least underneath. The temptation would be, hey, let's play a little man too and see how it goes, because the other stuff hasn't worked against them as much.
Well, and the other thing you can do against that, and the Patriots have done this, is run, and run some more. And against teams like Indianapolis, like you said in years past, and I believe against the Steelers a little bit last year, they were able to run the ball effectively. I just think that the Patriots will come out with something that the Steelers haven't seen, and I just think that Monday night sets up for Belichick to really get this team as ready schematically as they could possibly be for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think so, but I also, this isn't, I'm not excuse harvesting here. It's more just, I'm trying to be realistic about what this could be. And if they aren't able to turn the corner this week, I don't think it matters that much. I mean, I know it would be a pain in the ass to have to travel once the playoffs, but this may just be personal bias talking. But, we got on two of our three Super Bowls. We celebrated in Pittsburgh. We clinched the AFC in Pittsburgh. So I don't mind that. And I don't think it's something that anyone, if you believe you have a championship team, you don't care replay. So I know fans don't think that way. I understand media doesn't really think that way. And I know that there's been a couple recent incidents in Denver that would make people think that that's just the absolute end all. But that's not, to me, it's not the only way. I think the most important thing is that you're playing at a super high level and you're healthy. That's way more important than the venue. So if you get the venue you want and you're playing terribly, well then, or you're beat up, then bad things can happen as well. So my thought is, I'm not certain we'll see the best version of the Patriots here in just, 5 short days. It's pretty reasonable we probably won't. It's pretty reasonable that you'll see a little bit better version of the Steelers, because they've had a little extra rest and they don't have travel. Then you might see it when these guys meet again in the playoffs, if that ends up being the case. So I just think it's going to be fun. It'll be entertaining. I'm not so certain, other than the home field thing, what it'll really indicate to what will happen down the road.
Matt, I want to really thank you for taking so much time out to talk X's and O's. It's really been a pleasure. Matt Chatham, the host of the Real Thing Patriots podcast on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio, also a Patriots expert analyst for NESN, and a college football analyst for ESPN. How else, Matt, can people follow your work?
I think that'll do it for now. I'm also on Patriots This Week. The show that I do with Zolak and Bob Sochi each week for Patriots.com. So I think that usually fills up my schedule. So it's that time of year. Stay with CLNS all day on game day, starting with the CLNS Media New England Patriots pregame show with Alex Barth a half hour before every game. Then you can catch the postgame show with Marvin Eveson and Mike Molyneux live after every single game on clnsmedia.com. Subscribe to both on iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube now. Also get daily team updates on the Patriots Newsfeed podcast with Tyler Trudeau, which is also available on the CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show feed, available again on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and the CLNS Media mobile app. The all-new CLNS Media website is launched at clnsmedia.com. clnsmedia.com is now the home of this podcast and also over 40 other podcasts and vidcasts in the world of sports, finance, comedy, and lifestyles. We are so excited to have our show featured on the new CLNS Media website. Support our network by checking out this episode at clnsmedia.com. That's clnsmedia.com.
Thanks again for downloading today's Patriots Beat. Want to once again thank our guest, Matt Chatham, the host of the Real Thing Patriots podcast on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. Matt, of course, is a three-time Super Bowl champion with the Patriots and a Patriots expert analyst for NESN and a college football analyst for ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Chatham58. You can also give us a follow at Patriots_beat and at CLNS Media. And of course, you can give my own personal Twitter account a follow at Trags, Trags. Today's sponsor was DraftKings. For Patriots content manager Mike Alongi, CLNS Media executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of the network, Nick Gelso, thanks to everyone who tuned in. This is Mike Petralia, and this is the Patriots Beat podcast powered by CLNS Media.
What's going on, Pass Nation? This is Marvin Zahn of the CLNS Media Network, and I'm here to tell you right now to check out the CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show hosted by myself and my co-host, Mr. Mike Nice. And live on CLNS Radio immediately after every single Pats game. Call in at 929-477-2386 toll-free to get your voice heard and contribute to the host breakdown and analysis of the latest Patriots contest. We also got the stars and sorries of the day, Twitter posts for the plays of the game, and everything else that is going on with the 5-time Super Bowl champion. Subscribe to CLNS Media New England Patriots postgame show on iTunes and Stitcher, and the best way, download the free CLNS Media Network mobile app for on-demand listening anytime, any place, anywhere.